Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Tim, and today I'm going to be starting a playthrough of Knights over Stalingrad. I know it's been quite a bit since my last video. Things have been really busy around here the last few months over the holidays and stuff. But trying to get back into some recording here, so hoping to get back to it. Yes, I do plan on finishing my Normandy 44 playthrough that I started last fall, and also I am going to eventually get back to finishing my Silent War playthrough. So those of you that are anxiously awaiting new episodes of those playthroughs, they are coming. And again, apologize for the bit of a hiatus I've taken here, but hopefully getting back into the swing of things now. All right, but today we want to talk about this game, Knights over Stalingrad, designed by Dan Monette, developed by Terry Simo, going to be published by Legion War Games. This game isn't out yet. I've been helping out with the play testing of the game and refining the rules and whatnot. And Dan was gracious enough to send me this pre-production copy it's kind of a homemade copy that he made. Printed off, got some mounted boards here. The actual game itself will come with a single paper map sheet that has these two boards on it, but for this prototype, it's a couple of mounted boards. We've got nice wooden counters with the stickers on them. I did all this stickering. It took quite a long time to do, but it's finally done and ready to play. But again, I want to thank Dan for providing this for me to be able to share with y'all. So to start off, just a little, well, I guess before I get into it too much, I did do a playthrough last year, late last year, I think, of playing through a short campaign of this on Vassal. So if you want a more bit of a lengthier playthrough, you can go check that out. I'm just going to do a single mission for this one, just to kind of give everyone an overview of how the game works and what it looks like in physical form as opposed to on the computer. Of course, this is all prototype stuff. The actual game will come with, your typical cardboard counters. Of course, nice cards. These are just kind of little flimsy cardstock cards, but they'll have nice cards with it and all that. So just to set the expectations there. But the game is primarily a solitaire game. There is a two-player option for it, though. And it models the air combat in and around Stalingrad immediately following the encirclement of the 6th Army following the highly successful Soviet Operation Uranus. So you've got your Soviet aircraft and your Axis aircraft. The Axis aircraft include Italians, Romanians, a few Hungarian units, and then, of course, the German units consist of the bulk of that. On the Soviet side, you've got 6 fighter squadrons, as well as an IL-2 squadron with some bombers and transports mixed in there as well. So you have your choice of playing either as the Axis player or the Soviet player. And like I said, there is a 2-player variant where one person can be the Soviets and one person can be the Axis. But it's primarily designed as a solitaire game. And if you're familiar with the game Aces of Valor, it uses a lot of the similar game systems to that. There was another game that was also published by Legion War Games. So if you are familiar with that game, you'll see some similarities here as we go through this one. As far as components, we've got, like I said, the two main boards here, which will be a single map sheet in the actual production game. But up here we have the campaign map. Shows a map of the area divided into sectors that you'll be traversing through on your missions. Various airfields on there. This area known as the Cauldron, right around Stalingrad, which is the area where the Soviets had been encircled, or the Axis forces had been encircled by the Soviets. And a lot of the game, when you're playing as the Axis side at least, is trying to get supplies into the Cauldron area there. We've also got a morale track here, which is used to track your mission points, campaign points, and then there's an optional rule that allows you to bank your mission points. So there are markers for all of that. Spot to denote the weather. There's 4 different weather conditions that can be in effect, can change from day to day, even within the same day sometimes. And they have various game effects, which are noted here. We've got our turn track. You can see the game can run from the 23rd of November up through the 27th of December. You have the option of playing, of course, just a single mission, which is what I'll be doing here. A short campaign, which consists of 5 missions, I believe, or a longer campaign of 10 missions, or you can do the entire full campaign. And depending on which unit you're playing as, they have different dates that they can start as, or start at, and or end at. That's all covered in the rule book. Down here we have the operations map. This is where the actual air combat takes place. Each of these boxes represent your fighter's initiative during each round of the combat, and you'll just work your way down from highest to lowest and activating those units to perform an action as you go through. And just some various boxes to place them once they've taken their action, or if they break off or they've been destroyed. Over here is just an area to to keep your player cards at, so you can see what you have available to you, and then a tracker for the combat rounds. Speaking of cards, there are a lot of cards in this game. Of course, you got your cards for your missions that you're going to play, and depending on which Staffel or squadron that you choose to fly as, there are different decks. There's a deck for the Romanian missions if you want to fly a Romanian squadron. There's Soviet missions for both fighters and IL-2s. And then there's, I believe, 3 different decks for German missions, 2 different BF-109 missions decks, and then 1 for BF-110s. We've got dogfight cards, in-flight event cards that can represent things that happen as you're moving across the campaign map there from sector to sector. And then there's also named aces for each of the different nationalities that can come into play. So for the Soviets, the Germans, the Romanians, there's actually 1 Hungarian ace as well, and an Italian ace. And then over here we have post-mission cards, which you draw one of those at the end of each mission, and they can have some sort of ongoing impact on your campaign. And then fate cards, which are optional, but they add kind of new capabilities or just special things that you can employ throughout the campaign. You get one of those to start with, and then I think one every 10 days you get to draw another one. And then, of course, over here we have our counters for the different aircraft. And just to give you a little rundown here of the counter. So up in the upper right-hand corner here, you have that aircraft's pilot experience level. So they range from aces, which are represented with the red pentagon with a 12 in the middle, to veterans, which have a 10, experienced, like this one here with the 8 and a triangle, and then there are also green pilots, which have a green square with a 6 in it. And what those numbers correspond to is what's called that aircraft's pilot experience die. So if they're an ace, they're going to be rolling a D12. If they're a veteran, they're going to be rolling a D10. Experience will be rolling a D8, and greens will be rolling a D6. And those are used for everything from determining their initiative each round of combat, to when they perform their attacks. And then if they take damage, they have to do a damage roll to see if it was enough damage to actually flip them to the reduced side. And that pilot experience die is used for all those different functions. Also on the counter, of course, is a representation of the aircraft itself. Very nice artwork by Ian Wedge. And the aircraft type. Up in the upper left-hand corner is the 2-hit numbers. So this particular aircraft will generate 1 hit on a 6 or higher, 2 hits on an 8 or higher. So you can see where having the higher experienced pilots are going to be rolling a die with higher numbers, so they have a better chance of getting hits. Then down here we have in the lower right-hand corner is the aircraft performance rating. That is factored into determining the aircraft's initiative. So it's higher performing aircraft are going to end up generally going before lower performing aircraft, but not necessarily, depending on their die roll. And then over here we have their firepower rating, which is basically when they do a hit, how much damage is that hit going to generate? A being the best and C being the worst. And we'll see how that comes into play when we look at the damage chits that they're going to be pulling. So those are the aircraft counters themselves. There are also ground target counters that might come into play for certain missions where you're having to attack a ground target, and then they have anti-aircraft defense that can come into play for that. And when an aircraft does generate a hit, they're going to be pulling these damage chits from a bag or a cup, whatever you choose to use for that. And you can see here it has the different aircraft firepower ratings on it. So when this chit's drawn, if it was an aircraft with an A firepower rating, then it would generate 5 damage. A B would generate 3 damage, and a C would only generate 2 damage. All right, there's these smaller counters that are used to keep track of the damage on the aircraft. So we'll see how that works. And just some other various small counters for keeping track of different things on the campaign map, keeping track of where your home airfield is, where your flight's currently at, any rendezvous point that you might be moving toward, and your target sector that you're flying to. All right, so I think with that, we can go ahead and get started. Game does come with a very nice sequence of play chart. Actually, this side is the sequence of play, and we'll be following that as we go through. And then on the back side here is the different, for each of the different aircraft types, fighters, heavy fighters, the BF-109 JBOs, dive bombers, ground attack and reconnaissance aircraft, and then bombers or transport. They each have different options that they can, for what they can do when it's their turn to perform an action. So this summarizes all of that, and also lets you know for a non-human player, like if I'm the Axis and then I'm playing against a non-human Soviet player, this is sort of a flow chart or sequence to look through to determine what choices they're going to make of what's available. So very handy. There's also several charts in the game. Dan has asked that especially some of the combat charts not be shown at this time yet, just so, because as I said, the game is still in development and we don't want some of that stuff getting out too early. But there are charts that we'll be referring to as we go through the game for a lot of different things. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the setup. We're choosing to fly as the JG3 Staffel out of Morosovsky, BF-109s. So based on that, we refer to section 5, I think it is, in the rules. Yeah, here it is. Campaign setup. So again, I was wrong on the counts here. So short campaign is actually 10 days. Medium campaign is 15 days. And then the long campaign is, again, different starting dates depending on which unit you're using. All right, so we're just going to say we're starting on November 23rd. So we'll go ahead and put our turn marker on that. And then we have to do our squadron selection. So we're choosing the BF-109 JG3 Staffel based at Morosovsky. So we need to randomly select any mix of 8 BF-109Gs with or without gondolas, but a maximum of 3 gondolas to begin the game. So for the BF-109s, there are just the regular BF-109s here. And then we also have the BF-109 gondolas, which have gun pods on them. And you'll notice the regular BF-109s have a firepower rating of B, whereas the gondolas have an A, but the regular ones are a little bit more performant. They have a performance rating of 8 versus 7 for the ones with the gondola. But we're going to randomly pick a total of 8 and maximum of 3 from these. I always like to take the most I can of these because they're really nice. So we're going to put these in a cup, draw 3 of those out. We've got 1 veteran, another veteran, and an ace. All right. And then for our regular 109s, we need 5 of these. We have an experienced. We have an ace. A veteran. Another experienced, or sorry, veteran. And our last one is another experienced. Oops, that's a Romanian. How did he get in there? The Romanians have the BF 109Es. Okay, oh, another veteran. All right, so pretty good experience level there for those guys. All right, so we're going to put them in the current, or in the ready box here on the operations map. Then, oh, and for this Staffel, actually, we have to start November 24th or later. So our starting date will be, we'll play a mission for the 24th of November. All right, and then just instructions for the other options that you have for which campaign you want to play. And then, once the campaign is selected, we go through the mission card deck and remove any calendar date specific mission cards. So this particular deck doesn't have any of those, but some decks have missions that have a specific date in the title. And so you would pull all of those out because the way those work is once you get to that particular day in the campaign, you have the option of either using that mission, flying that particular mission, or just choosing a random one. There are also these optional ground attack missions, which are all date specific. And if you choose to use these, you could also choose to play one of these when that particular date comes around. But for this, we're actually going to choose a specific mission that I want to demonstrate. So we're going to be using this escort mission to Gumrak 2 as our mission that we're going to play. Normally you would, like I said, either choose one for the date that you're currently on or just draw one randomly. And this just talks about how there's the optional ground attack mission cards that you can add, as well as the Hungarian mission. That's also a date-specific mission that you can choose to fly. And then if you choose to use them, the Axis, I don't know if it's Jabo or Jabo, and JU-88 mission cards. These actually just get mixed in with the your normal mission deck, and but they can only be flown once, and then once you fly one of those, they're removed from the game. All right. Next up is draw our initial dogfight cards, or if we were playing as the IL-2 squadron, there's different cards that they use, but we'll get to draw 3 of these dogfight cards. So we'll just give them a little shuffle here and see what we end up with. All right, so our first one is break. Can be used to avoid attack. It can be used with an initiative differential of 1 or less. So basically, if the aircraft I'm attacking would have to be in the very next initiative box or in the same initiative box as me. And lets each aircraft roll their experience die. High die wins. And if it succeeds, there's no attack and both aircraft go to action taken. If it fails, though, then the enemy gets their normal attack with a +1 DRM to hit. And then they both go to action taken. So that's the way that one works. This would be, this would be when you're being attacked, actually, I think. So I said that wrong. So the enemy would be attacking you, and they would have to either be in the same box as you or one higher than you. So that might come in handy if we want to avoid getting attacked by someone. Our second one is the Hinari Komi. Allows attack. Again, initiative differential of 1 or less. Same thing. Each aircraft rolls their experience die. If it succeeds, the player's aircraft may attack the enemy attacking it with a +1 DRM to hit, and the enemy does not counterattack. So it's basically, I'm about to get attacked. I play this, and if it succeeds, then they don't get to attack me. I get to attack them instead with a +1 DRM. If it fails, then we do not get an attack, and the enemy gets their normal attack and a second attack with a -2 DRM. So these are kind of a lot of risk reward here in these dogfight cards. Then our third one is a Terran attack. This is only for Soviet aircraft, so we'll have to draw a different one. Sandwich, which is a counterattack. This is if we have a wingman. And each aircraft rolls their experience die. If you succeed, the wingman gets shot. Wingman gets shot at attacker prior to attacker's shot with a +1 DRM. Okay, so someone's attacking me, and I have a wingman. I can play this, and if it succeeds, then my wingman gets to shoot at the attacker first with a +1 DRM. If it fails, then they get their normal attack on the lead, which normally they don't get to attack the lead. They only get to attack the wingman. So that's a benefit for them if we fail. And they get a second attack with a -2 DRM. And after the 2 attacks, the wingman gets a normal attack. So I guess sounds like in this one, either case, the wingman would still get to attack back. It's just depending on when and if you get attacked twice first or not. All right, so that's going to be our 3 dogfight cards. And continuing on with the setup, there's an optional rule here. Anytime you see this big asterisk in the rules, that means it's an optional rule. If we had failed to draw an ace in our initial roster, then we could exchange one excuse me, for either an ace or a veteran, or exchange any aircraft for an ace, or exchange a veteran for a named ace. But we did get a couple of aces, so we don't get to take advantage of that. This is also an optional rule that you can use. Any of the aces that you do have, you can give them a specific trait, which is detailed on the back, near the back of the rule book here. So you would roll a die for each of your aces, and they could get one of these traits, which normally only the named aces have these, but we'll forego doing that for this playthrough, but just so you know, that's an option. All right, I think that was it for setup. Oh, fate cards. We are going to use the fate cards. We'll go ahead and draw one of those. because they can be kind of fun. And again, normally you'd get one of these at the beginning of your campaign, and then every 10 days you could draw another one. So unless you're playing one of the longer campaign games, like the medium or the full, then you're only going to get one of these. All right, so we have Channeling Richthofen. Dogfighting Success. When this card is played, the player automatically succeeds on the dogfight or IL-2 combat card they play without any die roll required. Well, that could come in real handy, because as you saw, some of those have some pretty bad consequences if you fail. All right, so that concludes the setup. So now we can go to the pre-mission phase, which, again, referring to the sequence of play chart here. See, we've gone through all of this campaign setup. It's got nice references to the rules if you need a refresher on how that particular part actually works. And then we're in the pre-mission phase. So the first thing we're going to do is roll for weather on chart A2. And chart A2, it's safe to show you this one right here. It's also printed on the board there. So we roll a D6. Depending on what we get, that's going to dictate the weather conditions and then their effects. And this is most of the effects. There's a more complete listing of the weather effects in the back of the rule book. All right, so let's see what we're going to have for weather. So we're going to roll a D6 for that. And we got a 3, which a 3 is going to be clear skies. We'll put that there to denote our clear weather. All right, next up, we have calculate any airfield damage, mission points or campaign points. So if this is for future turns, if I was able to damage some Soviet airfields, for example, I would gain some mission points and or campaign points for that. Or if, I think also if my airfields have been damaged, I can lose points for that as well. But that's not going to apply here because this is the first turn. So next we draw a mission card or fly a calendar date mission. And the Soviet player would select which airfield they're going to operate out of for that turn. For us, we're just always operating out of Morosovsky, which in fact we can denote that on here with our Axis Home Airfield marker. And this is also where our flight will be starting. All right, so like I said, this would be where you would randomly draw a mission card or choose one of the calendar date specific missions. We're going to fly this escort mission to Gumrak 2. So we get to select 4 fighters to take on this mission with us. So let's decide who we want to bring. I think we'll definitely want both of our aces. So we're going to move them over here into the current flight box. And then I think I want to have another gondola aircraft and then one of our regular 109s. We'll take 2 aces and 2 veterans on this flight. Leave these guys back at home base. Okay, and what we're going to be doing is rendezvousing at sector H5. Let's put our Axis rendezvous marker on H5, which is right here. Once we get there, we're going to roll on chart C7 to determine what aircraft we're going to be escorting into Gumrak, which is right here in the heart of the cauldron. And then after we do that, then we're going to rendezvous with a BF-109 named ace and a BF-109 veteran when we get to sector K4. And these additional escorts that we pick up there, the named ace and the veteran, are going to land at Gumrak after the combat is complete. Of course, any bombers or transports that we rendezvous with here at H5 will also be landing at Gumrak because they're taking in supplies. Once we get to Gumrak, which we can put our target waypoint there since that's where we're heading to. Once we get there, we're going to roll on chart C4 to find out what sort of enemy aircraft we run into there that are intercepting us. There will also be an airfield marker there that will provide flak protection for us, but also will be a possible target if there's any, especially if there's any ground attack aircraft that we encounter there. They might go after the airfield there at Gumrak. And also, the Soviet forces are going to get a named fighter ace and, excuse me, as well as a veteran wingman will get added to whatever we end up rolling for on chart C4. And then once that's complete, then our aircraft have the option of either landing there at Gumrak. If they do, they'll be unavailable for the next day's mission because they'll have to spend a day coming back. Or we can fly them back ourselves and land them back at Morosovsky, which is probably what we're going to do. We'll see. If they get pretty banged up, we might decide to just let them land there to prevent them getting shot down on the way home. All right, so we're going to put this in the current mission card slot and continue on. The next step of the pre-mission phase. All right, so next up is determine if we're aborting the mission. No, we're not going to abort the mission. You can choose to abort the mission before it even starts. If you're like in such bad shape, you're like, I don't want to risk flying this mission. You do have to lose a campaign point, however, if you do that. Which campaign points, by the way, are basically determine your victory or success. There's actually this nice... had it in the shot earlier, this nice book here, which describes for each of the different staffels or squadrons what your victory level is. Basically, it gives you kind of it's like a correspondence letter that's sent to you from higher command that says, hey, you did a great job, or hey, you did terrible, this is what's going to happen to you. So just to kind of fill in the storytelling aspect of it, it's pretty nice that they're going to include this as well. Yeah, it's got, so your different victory levels are minor defeat. There's also major defeat, minor defeat, draw, minor victory, and then major victory. And again, that's all based on your campaign point level at the end of the campaign. All right, but we're not going to abort this mission. We're just getting started here. We're all fresh. We're good to go. All right, select pilots for the mission. Well, we kind of jumped ahead and already did that. and determine need for reinforcement. So if you don't have enough aircraft that can fly on the mission as what you're required to bring, or what you're asked to bring, you can request assistance, and there's a chart that you roll on to see if you're going to get some Romanian fighters to help you out, or some Italian fighters to help you out, or possibly some German fighters from a different squadron or a different Staffel to help you out. So that's what that's all about. All right, so that's going to conclude the pre-mission phase. Now we can get into the flight phase. So these are kind of the steps you go through in the flight phase. You do your mission movement. So each time you move, you have the option to move. You can move orthogonally with no negative ramifications, or you can choose to move diagonally, but only if your flight consists entirely of fighters. So once you've got some transports or bombers or other aircraft types in with your flight, then you lose the ability to move diagonally. But if you move diagonally, you run the higher risk of having some kind of event occur during your flight. So it can help you get around quicker, but at a slight risk. But we're just going to choose to move directly horizontally here toward our rendezvous point. So that is our mission movement. You can move one sector either orthogonally or diagonally if you only have fighters with you. Then you need to check for flak. That's only going to be applicable once you enter the cauldron. You'll notice all these, a lot of the spaces in the cauldron, other than over the two German airfields, have Soviet flak emplacements. So you'll have to endure that as you're flying through there. We're not there yet. Then we've got mission card instructions. So we've already looked at that. And this would apply whenever the mission card is telling you to either rendezvous or intercept. Rendezvous with friendly aircraft or intercept enemy aircraft. Well, we're not at the rendezvous point yet, so we have nothing to do there. I skipped over this. Mission event checks. So every time you move from one sector to another, you're going to be rolling. Again, I think it's just the C and D charts that Dan wanted me to avoid showing, so I think we're safe letting you see these here. If not, this will probably get edited out. But we roll on this flight event check table, so we're rolling a D10, and depending on what row you're in on the map, so rows 1 through 3 use this column, rows 4 through 8, or if you're in the approaches, which are these areas just west and south of the cauldron, which are the only ways you can enter the cauldron, by the way. You would use that column, or if you're actually in the cauldron, you would use that column. So we're going to roll a D10, and since we're in row 5, we'll be using this column here. And if it's a 1 to 6, then nothing happens. If it's a 7 or 8, we have a flight event, so we have to roll then on chart B2, and again, using the appropriate column, depending on what row you're in, or if you're in the approaches or the cauldron. And then something else might happen. Or if we roll a 9 or higher, then we draw an in-flight event card. And then this is just reminding you that if you chose to move diagonally, then you're going to be adding +1 to this die roll. So again, more likely that you're going to have an event. And then also, if you end up having to roll on chart B2, you're going to add +1 to that, which means you're getting into the... Basically, these are the not so bad results, and then they get worse as you go down. So let's go ahead and make that roll. D10. And we got a 4. So a 4 on chart B1 for rows 4 through 8 is no event. Nothing happened there. Mission location movement. This is if you're actually moving into your mission location. This section explains what to do there. If you're attempting to land at a non-home airfield or in the cauldron, you would refer to 7.5. You can choose to abort the mission. Again, anytime during the mission, you can choose to abort, and this explains how to handle that. Or once you've completed the mission and you're returning to base, there's some rules there that apply, and then some special rules once you're in the approaches of the cauldron. So none of that applies here, so we can just continue then with our next mission movement. So now we will be moving to our rendezvous point. So if we check, and if you remember on here, it mentions for rendezvous, we want to refer to section 7.3. So we're rendezvousing with friendly forces. The rendezvous attempt is made before rolling for a possible event. So, although this says you might want to look at addressing this order here, because really you need to check this before this in most cases. The only exception is if you move in diagonally into your rendezvous sector, then you would do the event check first and then perform the rendezvous. But we moved normally, so we're going to do the rendezvous first. And rendezvous is automatic unless there are heavy clouds. So we're clear skies, so we don't have to roll to see if the rendezvous succeeded. If it were heavy clouds, then there's a whole procedure you have to go through here to see if you actually succeed in the rendezvous. All right, so we have arrived at the rendezvous location. Let's refer back to our mission card, see what we're supposed to do here. So we're going to be rolling on chart C7. This is one you don't get to see. So chart C7 tells us it's the Axis Escort Mission Table. We need to roll a D6. And we got a 6, which means we are escorting 1d3 plus 2 of JU-86s. So we need to roll a D3, which I'm going to have one here. It's just a 6-sided die, but 2 sides are 1, 2 sides are 2, 2 sides are 3. So we got a 2, so it's going to be 2 plus 2 is 4, so we're going to have 4 JU-86s that we're going to be escorting. Let me find those over here. JU-86, here they are. All right, and we're going to put them in a cup and draw 4 of them out. Oh no, we don't need to do that. These are all identical, that's right. All of the bombers and transports are experienced pilots and all have the same stats. So it doesn't really matter which ones you use. So we're just going to pull 4 of them out and add them to our current flight. And so that's all we do for here. The next step will be when we get to sector K4. So I'm going to move the rendezvous marker to K4, which is right here, just inside the cauldron. And that's where we're going to rendezvous with a named ace and a veteran, I believe. Yep. All right, but now that we've done the rendezvous, we need to roll for our flight event. So once again, referring to chart B1, we're still on row 5, so we're going to be using this column again, rolling a D10. And we got a 3, which again falls in the 1 through 6, so no event. This is going a lot different than the practice game I played beforehand. It seemed like every sector I moved into, I was encountering some enemy aircraft. All right, so we're back to our mission movement. We're just going to continue moving. I don't think we want to go. I guess we could do a diagonal move. Oh, no, we can't. Nope, never mind. Remember, we're not all fighters now, so we cannot move diagonally. So we're just going to keep plugging along here to the east into sector I-5. And again, roll for another in-flight event. We got a 5 this time, which is still in that 1 to 6 range, so no event. So let's move again. Well, now we're in the approaches, so that's going to change which column we're looking at here. And now that we're in the approaches, it's a 1 through 5 is no event. And we got, I think it's a 7. Yep. So we do have our first flight event. We got a 6 through 9, so it's going to be a flight event. We now roll on chart B2, and again using the column for the approaches. We got an 8. Oh boy. So an 8 is going to be, we roll on the cauldron raid table C2 if we're over an airfield, C3 for all others. We are not over an airfield where we are, so we're going to be using C3. So chart C3 is the cauldron raid table. It requires a D6 to be rolled. We got a 5, which is going to be 1d6 plus 1 of IL2s. Oh boy. So let's hope we roll low on this D6. Oh boy. That's going to be 6 IL2s. So we get our stack of IL2 aircraft counters. I will mention there are a couple of optional Soviet squadrons that you can incorporate into the game. There's one optional Soviet fighter squadron that has a little bit higher experience level that you can substitute for one of the other ones. So if you want to make the game a little bit harder if you're playing as the Axis player, or a little bit easier if you're playing as the Soviet player, you can add those in. There's also an alternate, it's called a SHAP, actually, for the IL-2s, SHAP, that you can substitute in place of the, this is the 622. I think it's the 504 is the alternate one that, again, has a little bit better, higher distribution of aces and veterans than this one does. And I'll also point out that there is one counter in each of the Soviet stacks that is a wingman counter. So if this one gets pulled as one of your aircraft, you basically set it aside and you replace it with two other aircraft. So they'll actually end up with an extra one if you pull the wingman counter. And those aircraft will fly as a pair, a lead and a wingman. And there's some different benefits that provides to them. You can only attack the wingman, and he gets basically a die roll modifier based on the experience level of the lead aircraft. So it helps protect them from you trying to hit them. All right, so we get 6 of these. Let's hope for some low experience. There's a veteran. And an ace, oh boy. And another ace, great. Let's mix this up some more. I don't know if they have any green pilots, but I'd sure like to see one. Okay, there's an experienced. And another veteran. And the last one is another experienced. Okay, so at least they only got 2 of each. 2 aces, 2 veterans, 2 experienced. There are some greens in here, but we didn't manage to pull any of them. So, all right. But we also didn't get a wingman, unfortunately. So that's going to be what we're up against. Now you'll notice on these IL-2s, there are some of them, like this one, that just have the black arrow in the front, which represents the forward-firing guns. So this one only has forward-firing guns. So he's only going to attack when he's the attacker. But there are also some that have this green arrow behind, which indicates this is a 2-seat IL-2, so it has a rear gunner. And so he's going to attack back when we attack him. Now the rear gunners always only roll a D6, no matter what the pilot experience is, and they only hit on a 6. And they do C damage rating instead of the A, which the IL-2 does. So yeah, these guys are nasty. All right, we could get beat up pretty badly here. All right, so we're just going to arrange them in descending experience order. The good thing, the plus for us, is they only have a performance rating of 3, whereas ours are, at least our fighters, are 8s and 7s. So we have a good chance of them not being able to attack our fighters, at least, but we also don't want them attacking our bombers. So it's kind of a catch-22 there, good and bad. All right, so we are now getting into the combat phase. So we start with setup, which is detailed in 8.1, draw enemy aircraft, which we've just done. Next step is to roll on chart B3 to determine the detection advantage. So basically we're rolling to see if, did we spot them first and we get the jump on them? Did they spot us first and they get the jump on us? Or is it just even Stevens? So chart B3, the detection advantage check table. It's going to be a D10 And then we've got a bunch of modifiers here that come into play. Really, what this boils down to is you check to see what the highest experience level is on each side. And so if both sides have an ace, then they cancel each other out. But say we had an ace, but their best was a veteran, so then we would end up with a net +1 die roll modifier. But if their best was an ace, and then say our best was only experienced, then we'd end up with a -2 die roll modifier. So in this case, we both have aces, so those will negate each other. The other thing to look for is if your flight has all fighters, you get a +1. If the enemy flight is all fighters, a -1. Well, that's not the case for either of us. They have no fighters. We only have 4 of the 8 that are fighters. It also mentions that Eagle Eye's ace trait might come into play for this roll, and depending on your campaign point level, that could also affect it. You'll notice here, I think it's okay for me to show this chart as well. Based on your current campaign point level, it has different effects. And one of them is if you're in the negatives, once you get to -8 or more, then you're worried and you get a -1 DRM on your detection advantage checks. But 8 or higher makes you confident and you get +1 on your detection advantage checks. So that can play a factor in this as well. But in our case, it's just going to be a straight roll, no modifiers, D10, and we got a 4, which I think is no advantage to either side. Yep, 4 to 7, just barely. If it had been 3 or less, then the enemy would have gotten a bonus to their initiative. So no advantage, so it's just going to be straight initiative rolls for this. And speaking of which, well, it doesn't say it outright here, but the next step would be, oh, I guess they defer that until you get actually into the combat sequence itself. So we've just determined that there's not going to be any advantage when we get to these combat initiative rolls. The other thing you got to look for here is if this was triggered by an event card or a mission card, if it specified any ground targets that need to be placed, they would go in the initiative 1 box down here. And if the current sector has an airfield symbol, then you would also place an airfield marker in the initiative 1 box, but this one does not. So that is going to take us to the combat sequence. So for combat, combat normally lasts for 3 rounds, as denoted by this combat round track here. So we'll keep track of that as we go through. The only exception is heavy clouds. The heavy clouds or fog? Heavy clouds, there's only 2 rounds of combat. All right, so we'll go through this sequence for each of these rounds. So first up, we determine aircraft combat initiative ratings. So we're going to be rolling their PEDR, which is short for pilot experience die roll. And again, that's just based on their aces roll a D12, veterans roll a D10, etc. And then to that roll, you add the aircraft performance rating. And then for the first round only, if there were any result from the detection chart that we just rolled, that would get added or subtracted as well. In this case, that's 0. And then any bonuses provided by pilot skills or cards. So in our case, it's just going to be whatever they roll on the die plus their performance rating. That's going to determine which box they get put into. So let's go ahead and do that first. Let's go ahead and roll theirs first so we see what we're up against. I'm going to use these lighter colored red dice for the Soviets. Let's see, how do we want to do this? Let's put the dice tray or the dice tower over here so it's not covering up any of the spaces. And we'll start with their ace that does not have a rear gunner. And they, oh boy, 12 plus their aircraft performance rating of 3 is going to put them in the 15 box. Then we've got another ace with the rear gunner. They got a 7 plus 3 is going to put them in the 10 box. Okay, then we're on to their veterans. Rolling a D10 and then adding 3 to that. There, that's better. 3 plus 3 is only 6. So he's going over here. Another D10. That's only a 2, even better. So he's going to be in 5. Then their experienced pilots roll a D8. That's an 8. Great. Or no, it's only a 3. Good. I thought it was an 8. It's a 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, so he's going to go over here as well. And then another D8 for the last one is a 4. So he's going to be in 7. All right, so that's what we're up against. Let's hope we can get higher than most of those. So we'll start with our aces. We've got our regular BF 109 performance rating of 8. So D12 plus whatever we roll on this die. Or plus 8, I mean. There we go. 12 plus 8 is going to be 20. And then our other ace, another 12. Excellent. He's only a 7, though, because he's gondola, so he'll be at 19. All right, then we've got our veterans. And we'll do that one first. That's a 6, I believe. Yes. So 6 plus 8 is 14. Not higher than that, but hopefully these two guys can at least put a hurting on him, if not take him out completely. And then we've got our other veteran. Rolls only a 3. Plus 7 is 10. He's going to be in here with this one. And then we've got our 4 bombers. So let's see, a D8 for each of those. And they only have a aircraft performance rating of 3. So that's a 3. So one's going to be in the 6th spot. Another 3. That's actually good, and I'll explain why here in a little bit. That is a 2. Not so good. And a 7. Okay, there we go. He'll be a little more out of harm's way there in box 10. All right, so that's the initial initiative placement. Then the next step is to highest to lowest initiative order, each aircraft gets to take one action. And then tied initiative is broken by the aircraft type. So fighters go before heavy fighters, go before reconnaissance, go before dive bombers and ground attack, go before bombers, go before transports. And then if it's still tied, then you go by their experience level, ace, veteran, experience, green. And if it's still tied, you go by their performance rating. And then if they're still tied, it's a random roll. So let's go ahead and get these organized within the boxes by who's going to go in what order. So any of these that have multiple aircraft. So fighters or heavy fighters first. There aren't any of those. Ground attack, which is what the IL-2s are. And then the veteran will go before the experienced. And then these two would be random roll, but they're not really going to do anything because they're bombers and they're not over a target that they want to bomb. And actually, in this case, they're bombers that are carrying supplies into Gumrak. All right, over here, we've got, even though this guy's a higher experience level, this is a fighter, so he's going to go before him. And then he'll go, and then the bomber. And then here, again, ground attack first, then bomber. So that's our initiative that we have all set. And I think this is probably a good place to stop. We're just a little over an hour here on this video. So we're going to stop here and we'll pick it up in the next episode. But we're all set for our first combat. So this has been Knights over Stalingrad. I thank you all for watching. Please like the video, share it with your friends if you think they might be interested in this game. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified whenever I post new content, which hopefully won't be several months like it has been. And also wanted to mention, Dan wanted me to tell you all that if you have any questions about the game in general, not just specific questions about this gameplay through, any questions about the game at all, leave them in the comments. He's going to be watching for those and is more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have about the game. Again, this is not available yet. It's on Legion Wargames pre-order program. I think he said they have to get 250 pre-orders in order to print the game. So kind of similar to GMT's P500 system, if you're familiar with that. But they just need to get to 250 in order to greenlight this. So check out the Legion Wargames website if you are interested in pre-ordering the game. And like I said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.